everybody, we're back here, this time outside my workshop. My name's Colwin Way and this is one of the series of videos on the Skills Centre at Home series. If you remember last time we had a little bit of an abrupt finish where the Wi-Fi cut out. First time it's happened in, I don't know how many weeks, 10 weeks now. But we were making this bowl, so we're just going to quickly finish this and then I want to talk to you about something that we get a lot of questions about, and that's beginner lathes or beginner kit. It's always expensive when you start to begin with, and we've had a lot of questions re lathes and tools and things like that. So you'll probably notice a different from my usual workhorse here. This is the AC355. We're going to go over a few of the spec of this one in a minute. Now this isn't the only craft lathe, of course. This is I would say the bigger of the benchtop machines. There are others available. We'll talk about those as we go though. So let's get this bowl finished. We'll go through some of the spec as we do. Charlie's absent from here, so helping me today behind the camera, it's son number 2, or number 1, depending on how you look at it. Finn's back. If you remember Finn from the first couple of videos, 10 weeks ago or so, he's back and helping us today. So here you go. So the AC355, when we talk about the numbers in the names, it's always a little bit baffling. AC, Axminster Craft, 355 distance over bed or overall bowl capacity, and the WL bits of wood lathe. It's as simple as that. So don't get confused with any of the terminology. That's what they stand for. If you start, if you look at price, for instance, we're around about £520, 526. Finn, you're going to have to help me out here.
529.
529, so 530 quid. But this, like I say, this is the largest one. If you start for this, the cheapest or less expensive benchtop craft lathe, you're talking just over the £200, about £210. So you can start off as little as that. And then we go up to about 350 again, I think. Finn, help me out again. For your first electronic variable speed, we're going up to about 350 from my check-in earlier.
Yeah.
The first floor standing craft lathe, like I said, it's a full. If you wanted a bigger capacity, this one, it's the AC370. So 370 here. We're over a metre between centres, so that's a big thing. Again, it's variable speed. This time mechanically variable speed, and so that's a proper big machine. This one, you know, you've got the capacity there. You can see that I've got my 114 chuck on it, so 114 mil. All the others I would go for 100 mil chuck, but this one we're using the Evo, the 114. Does exactly what I want it to, really. It's got a T38, so 33 with 3.5 thread on it on this one, where the other smaller bench tops, they've got the inch by 8. Alright, so there's a slightly different thread size there, but that's the only 2 threads that we do anyway. All the spec is on the website, it's in the catalogue, so have a look there if you want to learn a little bit more about the spec. But keep asking questions. Finn's done this before, he knows exactly what the ticket is, so ask questions, he'll ask me, and we'll get them answered if I know the answer, okay? So let's start. We've got a slightly different backdrop, like I said, we're outside, we're in the sunshine. So I've got a different set of safety specs. We've got our tiki gods that we made a couple of weeks back. You may have seen the video for that. If not, check that one out. That's on YouTube now. So what we'll do, we'll just reverse this one around. If you remember, we gave it a coat of oil, and I was talking. What was I talking about? I was talking about bowl sanders actually, as it cut out. So it's all sanded. It's oiled. We had some finishing oil. I haven't done anything to it since. I literally just left it and carried on with other things. So take it off. You remember we had a sacrificial base on the bottom of this one, so this is what we want to remove now. Now, my large push plate is a little bit too big for this one. That's going on my 16-inch lathe. This one being 14. We're going to improvise, so we're going to do the same thing, and with the C-jaws on the chuck, we're just going to add one of my sanding discs, which just happens to be a little bit bigger. So there's my sanding disc, probably around about a 12-inch disc, this one. Now, if you have that problem, and with these larger discs and large jaws you will, if you have an issue like that, go for the longer chuck key. They're always going to be an asset to your toolkit, the longer chuck keys, and that'll give you plenty of room. Look, and I'm expanding those jaws out into that little faceplate ring. There we are, and then, of course, that being a sanding disc, if I just push the bowl onto that, we're going to damage it. So router matting, as usual, we're going to use the router matting. So let's clear the decks a bit. There are many ways of reversing bowls. We've looked at lots of them over the series. If you think about wood plates or button jaws, pole jaws, all of those sorts of things, they're all a good way of doing it. This is a nice quick way. This is before wood turning chucks, if you were. Well, let's just quickly do this. I don't want to spend too much time doing this one because I've got a few projects I want to show you. We're going to look at the capacity of the machine as well. So here I'm just pushing that onto the push plate. The route matting's protecting the bowl but also adding grip. Tool rests nice and close. Make sure everything's tight. Now this lathe doesn't start at 0, and I'll be honest with you, most of them don't. This one starts around about what the belt setting that I've got it starts around about 300 reps, so that's fine, but I'm going to start right the way down 0, or lowest speed I can get to there, so 300 reps. Then start the machine, make sure everything's nice and tight. Okay, glasses on. Okay, now let's just give it a little bit more speed. And we'll start with a bowl gouge, which I've conveniently left in the workshop. So let's just stop that a second. So we're going to grab a bowl gouge. Now we're going to work with, I've got 3 gouges to use today because we've got 3 different projects. I've got a small 6mm bowl gouge, so your 1/4 inch. We've got a 3/8 or 10mm bowl gouge, and I've got a spindle gouge as well, 3/8 spindle. So we're going to work with those. We're going to go with a little 1/4 inch on this one. 2 seconds. So these gouges have been freshly sharpened literally about 15 minutes ago. So I know they're going to be working nicely. And just a reminder of the timber that we were using here. This was Lucham's oak, so a very localised timber to where we are. So Exeter oak, basically. So Lucham's oak. I've got this from a village called Ossory St Mary. Nice and close. So all we're going to do is just take off that little sacrificial foot. A little bit of sanding for you then. So just using the bevel of the gouge. Just using the bevel of the gouge now, just to keep that nice clean finish. Now a little bit of care, remember I always say that you can go through the bottom of the bowl equally as easily cutting from the backside than you can from the inside, so just a little bit of care. You need to know how thick everything is, and I'm confident here because we've put that little upturn that we're not going to, or maybe I'll wait until we finish the bowl before I actually say it, but I'm pretty confident. So skimming that little edge. There we are, that's all I'm going to do for the minute. Stop, we'll double check, we'll have a look and see what we've got going on there. Okay, we're good. Right, I think now Finn, if you come in nice and close, let's have a look, get right up to the business area. So around here we want to look. You can see what we've got. I've done a nice little recess in there. We're going to sand that very briefly and then we'll explain what we do with this little nib. So I'm going to start with a 150 grit abrasive, and we're not going to go right the way down to the 100. So 150. I've got no dust extraction out here. I don't think we're going to need it too much. So just a brief bit of sanding. Now, Finn, Charlie always gives me a countdown on the time. Lets me know when I've got 20 minutes, half an hour and 45. So.
Alright, no problem.
Don't forget guys, you've got questions, just fire them away. So just a little bit of sanding, like I say. I will put a bit of oil on here in a minute. And there's your 400 grit. So a wee bit of oil, just a little bit. And again, if you have time, just sand that in. Use 600 grit to sand in the oil though, so much finer. Right, that's that. Let's take that away, just show you where we are. Okay, so far that's what we've got, this little nib. Now I'm not going to go to the point of taking that off, because you've seen me do this so many times, but basically I use one of the power sander heads, the 2-inch 50mm power sander head, or the 75, doesn't matter really, on its edge, just to sand that away whilst holding the power sander in the chuck, or the power sander foam pad in the chuck. Then you can sand that off down to 400 grit or 600 to take the last little remnants away. That's the easiest way to get rid of that, and you'll have no signs of a chuck hold there at all. So there we are. So that was our Tuesday's bowl, a bit of Luckham's oak, and that was from a rough turn piece that we turned probably about a year ago now, if I'm honest.
Do you or have you used drop fingers for production turning?
I haven't used drop fingers for production. You will know my training is as a production turner, but I was slightly, our production stuff was slightly different. So we were production turning things, the more crafty side of it, natural edges, bowls, fruits, bobbins, all those sorts of things. We've done some staircase spindles and things like that, but nothing to the scale of people like Richard Finley, Dave Dolby, Steve the Woodturner, all those guys, you know, Gary Rance, you know, I wasn't doing as much of that sort of thing. They are fantastic though. If you're thinking of production turning and you want to do that type of architectural turning, that's definitely the way to go forward.
Just another one here. If you reverse the chuck and the bowl is out of balance, what do you do then?
If you reverse, and it's out of balance, the thing is, and I do see this quite a lot, if you'll probably find that you can, so take timber, it's a soft material, your chuck is metal, it's hard, it isn't, and you have two soft sides, two hard sides to a bit of timber. So if you pinch too hard, you'll pull it away. You'll pull it out of balance. So there is only one way to solve that, unless you're reversing a very hard bit of timber that acts like metal and it doesn't give. You tap it. You just basically tap it till it's true, then tighten it up. And that's the honest truth. There is no magic in it. You literally just tighten it that way.
If you've got a lathe that's lowest speed is 800 RPM,
yep,
would you still be able to do thread chasing?
It's a bit, I'll be honest, it's a bit fast. You're going to struggle. You probably strip, and you know my experience with thread chasing. It's not vast, but everything I've read and watched, they always say about nice and slow, between 350 and about 600 is your very, very top. So I would have to say you'll be struggling at that speed, I'm afraid. Right, I wanted, unless there's any more just for the
Just
minute.
a quick one.
Yeah.
Couple latecomers. Can you just repeat what the lathe is called?
This is the 355, the AC355WL. So 355 stands for the bowl capacity. So that's the in metric, the bowl size it will take. The AC bit is Axminster Craft, and the WL bit is wood lathe. A nice little beginner lathe, this one. It's a whole horsepower, so you got 750 watts of power here. So whole horsepower of power. And what I want to do now, just showing the distance between centres. So there's a magic distance, 18 inches is that magic distance, because that's chair legs. And a lot of the smaller lathes just don't have that capacity unless you go for a bed extension. This lathe comes with it straight out the box. We're all good to go. We can turn our chair leg, so I do a lot of Windsor chair making, that sort of thing. Perfect, not a problem. We're going to do though, we've got a very high-tech rig set up behind Finley. Basically it's a big umbrella stood on a table, and I've just looked at that table and it's got two square sections at either end as its legs, and we've got a little bit of turning in the middle, so I thought we could do that. So I'm not going to turn this section, we're going to create two pummels, and pummels are, you find me a pencil, Finn. There'll be a pencil line around somewhere. Pummels are the square sections, so staircase spindles, table legs, that sort of stuff. They're pummels, and we need to know how to turn from those. So we're going to get the lovely skew out. Everybody loves a skew. I rave about skews all the time. So we're going to get the skew and turn. Now let's go faster. So again, we want to change the belt settings. So belt settings here are like gears on a bicycle. We've got a full variable speed on each of the 3 belt settings. So if I want to go, say for instance I'm doing a big bowl, I want to go down to my first gear. If I'm doing something small like this, I want to go to top gear. So that's how we use those pulleys. Thank you very much. So I want to go nice and fast now. So we're going to change the pulley. So let's go up that way. So just change where that belt setting is.
How do you decide which centres to use for a given project?
Well, on this one, so I've changed over to the Pro drives in this side, and the Pro drive is a nice sprung centre. It's got lots of splines on it. I want a maximum amount of grip. But the other thing is size. This is only a small piece. I don't need to go for a massive centre, so I'm going as small as I possibly can. In a minute, I'm going to give you a project to practice over the weekend, which is a little toadstool, great for beginners because it's got lots of curves in it. And we're going to use a pair of matched ring centres, a friction drive and a live centre. So we'll have a look at that as well. All right, so let's do a little pummel on each side, so I'm not measuring anything. So this would be, if you were using copying fingers, this would be the sort of thing that you would use it on. So there's my lines. You may not see those at the moment. I can see them because I'm in line with them. But we're going to use the skew first, and I'm going to whip through this one because I want to do that little toadstool for you as well. How long have I been, Finn?
We're coming up to 20 minutes.
Coming up to 20 minutes. No problem. So this is my, you've seen this one before. This is the German skew, the tapered skew. I've got plenty of these skew chisels, even the Colwin Way skews, the signature tools, don't forget. Alright, that one then. They're available in the 3 sizes, so we've got it's my favourite, the small one for the smaller pieces is definitely the favourite. Little German skews. We're going to use the original, the big one though, just to cut in a pummel, both sides. We'll do the other one whilst we're here. This timber's yellow pine, by the way. So yellow pine, really, really big. That's me moving that whilst that was spinning. It just moved a little bit. Yellow pine, really big difference between summer and winter growth. The density of the winter growth is obviously far denser. So that's the dark lines. But it's quite a nice one to turn though. Let's just take that off. Pretend that never happened, everybody. There we are. So I want to be down the solid, and then use the roughing gouge. We'll just clean off the centre. And when you're going up to the pummel on either side, turn the roughing gouge over. All right, and that'll allow you to creep right in. We're going to get the skew chisel back out again in a minute. There we are, down to round. So back to the skew. We'll just clean up, get a nice clean finish. And again, when you get up to the detail, just revert back to the heel. So that shorter tip. Back to the heel. There we are, same up here. I can use the hand as long as you're not anywhere near the tool rest. So I'm underneath the piece with my thumb on top of the skew. So that's going to be my travelling steady. Down to the heel, into the corner. Into the corner. Clean up any of that old mess there. Right, I haven't thought of a design yet, so let's do one. So we'll do a V cut. We'll just start off with a nice fillet, which is fillets are these sections. They're basically a flat face. Then we'll do a little bead. We'll do the same this side.
Does Axminster Power Tools have a drive that fits the Power Tools chucks?
We do. The 6-digit code I'm not sure, but abbreviation is a DCFC, I think. I'm sure my Axminster colleagues that are following this at the moment will put a description up for you. But yeah, it's a parallel shank drive basically. It's only a 4-prong drive, it's not a pro drive, but it will fit in the chuck. It makes life a little bit easier. So what have we done there? So let's go for, so we've done a bead, we'll go for a cove there. And we're going to work back to that area. We'll do another, let's go for, I'll tell you what here, we'll just do a half bead. Nice and deep. And I'll come in there with the spindle gouge in a minute. There we are, we'll do a nice little bead on this side. Now to roll the other side of that bead, I'm going to struggle. Chisel's too big. So we'll go to a smaller skew. There we go. We'll do a half bead here, half bead here, half bead here. There we are. Now let's do a cove. So I'll go to the spindle gouge for the cove. Difference between bowl gouges and spindle gouges is that with the spindle gouge you're doing an awful lot more twisting of the tool, where bowl gouge is more handle movement. There we are. Right, so I'm going to go small bowl gouge. So we're getting nice and thin now. The issue when you're thin, of course, is you get vibration. So let's use the bowl gouge bottom edge. We'll use it as a skew. And we'll rough out. Yeah, I think that's far enough for this little table leg. So we need to clean that up. I'll stop that to show you the difference. That's not a good finish. That's because we've used a roughing cut. We've pull cut basically. So we need to clean that up. So let's get the skew working. Without support, you're going to get bevel bounce. You're going to get a lot of whipping around, and that will show itself in a vibration line. So what we need to do is support. You can use a steady if you have one. If you're going to use your hands as you're traveling steady, you need to think about everything. Where you're putting your fingers, we never put our fingers anywhere near the tool rest. Please remember that. It really hurts if you get your fingers caught down there. Also think about what you're wearing. Don't want anything dangling down, potentially hitting this pummel by the headstock and getting caught. Jewellery, all those sorts of things.
Are you on centre line or above with those chisels?
I'm above. Skew chisels always above. Bowl gouges, spindle gouges below. I haven't moved it too much here just because I want to go through it fairly quickly with you. But that's the difference. Bowl gouges, roughing gouges, spindle gouges down. Skew chisels up high. So just supporting, and I'm not holding this very tight. I'm literally just acting as a sandbag, really, absorbing some of that vibration. If you press hard or try and grip it, your hand will get hot and you'll let go. There we go. That's our little table leg. Obviously you'd have to make 4 of those, and maybe copying techniques we could do in another video, maybe a separate time. But they're a nice little practice piece. A little bit of yellow pine, and 4 of those to make our table. We'll have the stringers coming through from the pummels. All right, Finn, can they see all of that? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Cool. Right, we'll keep asking questions. I'm going to move on to the next project now. This is something for you to do over the weekend. If you fancy giving this a go, we're going to make a little toadstool. It's one of those things that I use as one of the first projects with a beginner's course, beginner's class. Really, because it explores bowl gouges, parting tools, a little bit of finishing, sanding, all those sorts of things. And also, it uses a nice little centre called a safety centre, a friction drive basically. It's a ring centre. And now that same profile I've got matched on the tailstock. Okay, so what we can do when we use these in conjunction with each other, you can turn the project around, so just to make life a little bit easier. Friction drives are also good. I use them with the school kiddies when they come up, and we have school children of all ages, right from the 11s, so the guys that are first going to secondary, right the way up to sixth formers and beyond. The trouble is, youngsters are really brave. They don't know the potentials and what can go wrong, so this gives them a little bit of discipline, and it tells them exactly how hard they can push with a chisel before the piece of timber will stop. Also, if they get a catch or nasty dig and something like that, the piece of wood stops as well. And I'll demonstrate that for you in a minute. This is a piece of laburnum. Okay, lovely little bit of laburnum. Can't remember where I got this. It would have been local though. And this is dry. Probably been dried now, I should imagine 4 or 5 years, so there's no moisture left in that. I'm hoping the bark's going to stay on, but I'm not going to worry if it doesn't. And it's got lots of things going on, lots of little areas. We are going to keep part of this as a natural edge though, so I will keep part of it. Just between the two centres, and we're literally driving with friction. Okay, so nice and tight. It will stop a couple of times before it settles down. Got to keep an eye on those little lumps that are coming out. And I'm going to do all of this to start with a bowl gouge.
On a Pro Drive, what's the Allen bolt at the back for?
That's to add tension. So underneath that bolt there's a little spring, and so that you've got 2 bolts in there actually. You've got a bolt, the spring, and another bolt. So adding tension with the spring directly controls tension on the point, and so it gives you basically more greater pressure against the workpiece. So nice and low for the minute. I'm on a good speed on the lathe, but I'm going low as I can on the controller. We're going to start with the top of the little toadstool first. I'm turning there at 2000 revs, and I've got a 1/4 inch 6mm bowl gouge. We'll do our first curve.
You're half an hour in.
Half an hour in. I think first time in ages, everybody, we're actually going to be on time. So take your time with this. So we're going to rely on the bevel. So I'm cutting into uneven timber, but now I've already got solid timber, so the bevel of the tool is now rubbing. Push up the length of the tool and sweep round with the handle. Good example of what the friction drive does now. So if I'm never touched a lathe before, I come along and I stab the piece with the chisel, that happens. It all stops. So it's a really nice centre to use if you're just starting, if trying to get an idea of how much pressure to put on. So I reckon we're going to go down to about halfway, and that'll be my natural edge. So flute of the gouge is around about 2 o'clock. There, we're breaking through into the heart of the timber now. So now we can come back around the top. So just a nice little, almost like a bell shape right the way around. There. Now, we've got to think, I'll stop the lathe. We've got to think now where to cut the underside. So we've got that lovely sweep, the transition there coming through from the sap and the heart. And I can see where the natural edge comes up, so I can place the parting tool in. And you can see down in that gap, yeah, see down in that gap and see how far I've gone. That's the only bit of natural edge now though, so I can rough out with the bowl gouge. Don't use the roughing gouge, it's too big, it's too clumsy, it'll hit that natural edge. Rough out with the bowl gouge, just by doing a pull cut. Then get your bevel rubbing again. Just do a nice little skew cut there. Bevel rubbing. And if I stop the lathe, let's get us in a bit closer now. The tool rest can do with being in. Make sure I'm not touching any of that natural edge. Now on a conventional course, this project will take us a morning, so we'll go over it step by step, what each tool does, not rush it, go through the whole process a little bit at a time, and break each movement down as well. It's really important, because now we're going to just wrap over the top curve. Finish that. Just going to run and grab a round nose scraper. And with your round nose, I always, when you buy them off the shelf, you'll have quite just a very basic curve. I always like to round them over completely to take any corners away, but also I'll put a little grind on the top. Okay, so almost like creating a negative rake. You calm the scrapers down that way. Keep it flat on the tool rest and get rid of any crossover between those two areas. We'll stop, we'll have a look before we start thinking about sanding. Finn, can you get the camera right in close to that piece? Everybody have a look and see what we're playing with there. So that's a lovely bit of laburnum. You've got the white sap on the outside running around, that lovely dark green in the heartwood there. And we're going to sand. I'll start with a 150, then we're going to use a friction polish on that one. So if I remove that, same abrasive. We're using the ultimate abrasive, the Hermes RB paper.
What bevel angles do you use for bowl gouges?
The bowl gouges, I'm using 55 degrees at the moment. I'm finding that's good for teaching as well. And the basic difference between the bowl angle, the bowl gouge angles, you think about 55 degrees is a good all-rounder because you can do your flat bottom bowls, you can do relatively what I would call a traditional shape bowl. However, if you want to go deep into a bowl, you're doing something that's deep and fairly narrow, then you'll want to extend that up, maybe up to maybe 40 degrees even, just so you get a more acute angle. Be aware, like skew chisels though, the more acute the angle, the twitchier they'll be. They're harder to handle, so you need to be a little bit more practiced in using them.
What is the second bevel on the scraper?
Second bevel on the scraper, what the angle, if it's an angle, I'll be honest with you, I don't keep record of the angles. the second bevel on the top though, it just dulls down the biting, so it's like creating a negative rate. Especially good if you're turning acrylics, polyesters, any of the epoxy resins, that sort of stuff.
"25 minutes
to go.
Yep.
Until an hour.
Yep.
Right. One thing I've learned from doing these videos, when you try and make something, when you limit yourself to time, hours go very, very quickly. And this is what a lot of a lot of turners, not just beginners, find, that they'll be in the workshop 1 minute, they'll look at the clock, and 2 or 3 hours would have disappeared very, very quickly. Especially if you're evening turning after work, that sort of thing. It's quite incredible how quickly time flies, because you're having fun, of course. There we are, that's all sanded. So we're going to leave all these little bits, there's little bits of lichen here and stuff. We'll leave those. A little bit of friction polish, so we're going to use the chestnut friction polish, but I'll be honest, I've used many friction polishes and I like them all. But this is my go-to. So give it a good shake because it will settle a little bit. Friction polish has a lot of carnauba wax in it, and that's what gives us the shine. So what I tend to do is just coat the piece first, make sure you've got everything covered, even including the bark. You want to change the colour of that. It will darken it, you see, so you don't want some pale patches and some dark patches still. There we are. So that's covered. That to one side. Now I start off with the damp section of tissue, but don't stay with that too long, because what will happen is you'll find that that'll start to break down and then stick to the piece of work. So just a little bit with that, and then revert back to dry, and now you're going to create the shine. So it's a friction polish, it's designed for us turners to be used on the lathe, and the lathe creates the friction and makes that carnauba really, really bounce, really shine.
Someone was just asking, if you're nervous about using the full length of the lathe, is the table leg the best thing to do?
No, that was just a project I picked to show the length. Absolutely not. Go for something, a practice piece on one of our regular courses starts off at 10 inches long by 3 inches in diameter. So it's nice and chunky. So that means you don't get that vibration issue. That's where you start. And start with anything. Start with softwood, hardwood, whichever you've got to hand is the thing to start with. Most timbers will turn. One thing I would advise against is not the timber as such, but any treated timbers. So anything that, you know, exterior timbers, tannalized timbers, all those sorts of things, they can be quite dangerous to you. So as well as the dust, you've got other chemicals mixed in with that. So just be a little bit careful with that. But apart from that, pretty much anything's fair game, to be fair. A little bit of a clean up this side. We're going to take that off. Now, I'm not at this stage, I'm not worried if it does suddenly jump off at me. It's not a problem, but it hasn't, so we're all good. We're just going to do a little bit of sanding on that nib. Okay, to finish this piece off. And that will be us for the day. Now, next week, there's a little bit to do here yet, but next week, just to let you know now, we're going to do... You're going to have to watch both, I'm afraid. You're going to have to watch Tuesday and Thursday, because we're going to start a 2-part project. And as you know, or if you don't know, I'm really into German toy making, the wooden German toy making history of the Erzberg regions, around Siphonov and how that area, so the All Mountains. And you'll know them probably by the manufacturers of things like nutcrackers, Christmas pyramids, that sort of thing. But we're going to do a German smoker. And for Wood Turning magazine back a few years ago now, I made a couple of smokers on there. One as one a wood turner with a lathe and another a farmer. That just represents the area that I live in. So I'm going to have a go at doing one of those for you. 2 separate parts, like I say, Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to do all the components, so you can make your own little smoker. You can make a doctor or nurse, that's quite good at the moment. You can light them on a Thursday night when you're clapping, all that sort of stuff. Or you can make a farmer. You can pretty much make whatever you want. And I'll go over the history of them, why they were made, and all of these sort of German toys and products. Each one had its own little fairy tale or story that went with them. So we're going to look at that, and then we'll get it smoking at the end if I can turn outside again. There we are. So now, whilst I was talking there, I've just added a sanding disc. This is a little nylon sanding disc that I made for travelling around, putting in my suitcase, that sort of thing. So it's not big, not clumsome, not heavy. It's still got hook and loop on the back, and I've made it to fit little power sander pads. And all we're going to do is just sand that away, and then we're going to add again a little bit more friction polish. There's a bit of a hole in the middle, let's avoid that a minute. There we are, a little bit of sanding, so we've got rid of that, the little nib. You can sand the bottom as well if you want to, just to flatten that off. We'll turn that off. A little bit more friction polish. Just a little bit on the top. A little bit of buff on the smock. Okay, and there we go, there's your little tool. So nice little practice piece. Great fun to make. Good practice with the bowl gouge, spindle gouges, parting tools, all those sorts of things. Okay, all right, Finn. You can bring that camera back. We'll have a little bit of a recap on that one because we finished in time. I don't have to rush, which is quite nice. So we were looking at this machine. It's the AC355 this way, and it does my full 18-inch leg, so that's 20 inches on this one. Any more questions about beginners machines, beginners tooling, anything like that, just write in. You know what you've been doing it on Facebook. Let us know, and we will get to your questions. If we don't get to them on the live sessions, we will follow them up. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Have a lovely weekend, everybody. Join me back on Tuesday. Remember, we're going to have a 2-part project, Tuesday and Thursday. So until then, have a wonderful weekend, safe turning. See you soon.